Absolutely. I'm very honored. It's a dream come true. Who would have thought?
They tried to warn us about Jacob Landry. For years, whispers circulated through the tight-knit Louisiana bayou community and among dedicated Swamp People fans. While millions of viewers admired his hunting skills and watched him carry on the family tradition alongside his father Troy, insiders quietly raised concerns. There were subtle signs, hushed conversations, and red flags that those closest to the situation tried to bring to light. But nobody listened. We were too captivated by the excitement of alligator season, too invested in the Landry family dynasty, and too focused on the entertainment value to pay attention to what was really happening behind the cameras. What we didn't realize was that the warnings weren't just idle gossip or jealous speculation. They were genuine concerns from people who cared about Jacob's future and knew the pressures he was facing. But what happened when those warnings turned out to be true? The consequences were far more devastating than anyone could have predicted, affecting not just Jacob's career, but his entire family's legacy on one of television's most beloved reality shows. Join us as we unveil the hidden truths about Jacob Landry that shocked the Swamp People community and left fans questioning everything they thought they knew about their favorite bayou family. The Golden Boy of the Bayou. To understand the magnitude of what happened, we need to go back to the beginning and examine who Jacob Landry was before everything changed. Born into the legendary Landry alligator hunting family in Pierre Part, Louisiana, Jacob seemed destined for greatness from an early age. His father, Troy Landry, had already become a household name through the hit History Channel series Swamp People, bringing the ancient art of alligator hunting to millions of viewers worldwide. Jacob wasn't just another cast member riding on his father's coattails. He was genuinely talented. From childhood, he demonstrated an almost supernatural ability to read the swamp, track alligators, and handle the dangerous situations that came with hunting massive predators in Louisiana's treacherous wetlands. Veterans of the bayou, men who had spent their entire lives in these waters, would often comment on Jacob's natural instincts and fearless approach to the hunt. When Jacob officially joined the Swamp People cast, fans immediately embraced him. He represented the next generation of Landry hunters, someone who could carry on the family tradition while bringing his own unique energy to the show. His chemistry with his father Troy was undeniable. They worked together like a perfectly synchronized machine, anticipating each other's moves and complementing each other's strengths perfectly. Television executives loved what Jacob brought to the table. He was young, charismatic, and represented the future of the franchise. Marketing materials began featuring him prominently, and there was serious discussion about eventually centering more storylines around his adventures. Fan forums buzzed with excitement about Jacob's segments, and merchandise featuring his image became some of the show's best sellers. But even during these successful early years, there were people paying close attention who noticed things that others missed. Longtime crew members observed subtle changes in Jacob's behavior between seasons. Fellow cast members occasionally made carefully worded comments in interviews that seemed innocuous at the time, but would later be recognized as gentle warnings. Local community members who had known Jacob since childhood began expressing quiet concerns about the pressures he was facing. The entertainment industry can be particularly brutal for young people who grow up in the spotlight, and reality television adds its own unique set of challenges. Jacob was navigating not just the normal pressures of young adulthood, but doing so while cameras documented his every move and millions of strangers formed opinions about his life choices. The bayou community that had raised him was suddenly sharing him with the entire world, and that transition isn't easy for anyone, regardless of how prepared they might seem. The warning signs nobody wanted to see. While Jacob's on-screen presence remained strong, those who worked closely with him began noticing concerning changes in his behavior and attitude. Production assistants and camera crews who spent countless hours with cast members during filming started reporting that Jacob seemed increasingly isolated and unpredictable. Unlike his father Troy, who maintained consistent professionalism throughout long filming days, Jacob's moods became more volatile and difficult to predict. According to sources close to the production, Jacob began showing up late for scheduled shoots, something that had never been an issue in his earlier seasons. The Landry family had built their reputation on reliability and professionalism, so these tardiness issues were particularly concerning. When confronted about scheduling problems, Jacob would often become defensive and dismissive, claiming that the production team was being unreasonable or that he had more important things to handle. Fellow cast members tried to address their concerns diplomatically. Several longtime Swamp People stars attempted to have private conversations with Jacob about maintaining the show's reputation and supporting each other as a television family. However, these well-intentioned interventions were often met with hostility. Jacob began accusing other cast members of jealousy, claiming they were threatened by his popularity with younger viewers and his potential to become the show's breakout star. The situation became more complicated when Jacob started missing promotional events and fan meet and greets. These appearances were crucial for maintaining the show's connection with its audience and generating revenue for the network. Jacob's absence from scheduled events created awkward situations where other cast members had to make excuses for him, often claiming he was dealing with family emergencies or urgent hunting responsibilities. Behind the scenes, network executives were growing increasingly frustrated with what they saw as unprofessional behavior. Reality television depends heavily on cast members being available and cooperative, and Jacob's growing unreliability was becoming a serious production concern. However, because of his popularity with viewers and his central role in the Landry family storyline, executives were hesitant to take strong action that might disrupt the show's successful formula. Local community members who had watched Jacob grow up also began expressing concerns. Pierre Part is a small, tight-knit community where everyone knows everyone else's business. Residents started noticing that Jacob wasn't participating in local events and traditions the way he had in the past. People who had considered themselves close to the Landry family found their phone calls and invitations ignored, creating tension within the community that had always supported the family's television success. Most troubling of all were the reports from people who worked directly with Jacob on hunting expeditions. Alligator hunting requires absolute focus, clear communication, and split-second decision-making. Lives literally depend on every team member being completely present and reliable. Crew members began expressing private concerns about Jacob's concentration levels and decision-making abilities during potentially dangerous situations. The incident that changed everything. Keep watching to find out what happened next, because the situation that finally brought all these concerns to a head was more serious than anyone could have predicted. During what should have been a routine filming day, in the middle of alligator season, everything that had been building beneath the surface finally exploded into the open. According to multiple sources who were present during the incident, Jacob arrived at the designated filming location several hours late, showing clear signs of impairment. His speech was slurred, his coordination was noticeably affected, and his usual sharp hunting instincts seemed completely absent. This wasn't just a case of someone having a bad day. Experienced crew members immediately recognized that Jacob was in no condition to be handling firearms or working around dangerous alligators. The production team faced an impossible situation. They had a full day of expensive filming scheduled, with crews, equipment, and other cast members all in position. Canceling the shoot would cost thousands of dollars and potentially delay the entire season's production schedule. However, allowing Jacob to participate in potentially life-threatening hunting activities while impaired would create enormous safety and legal liabilities. Troy Landry, Jacob's father and the family's patriarch, was reportedly devastated by what he witnessed. For a man who had built his entire reputation on professionalism and family values, seeing his son in such condition during a professional obligation was heartbreaking. Sources close to the family described Troy as being torn between his loyalty to his son and his responsibility to the show, the crew, and the viewers who had supported their family for so many years. The situation escalated when Jacob became confrontational about the production team's decision to suspend filming. Instead of acknowledging the seriousness of the situation, he accused the crew of conspiring against him and demanded that cameras continue rolling. The confrontation became so intense that other cast members had to physically intervene to prevent the situation from becoming even more destructive. Network executives, who had been trying to handle Jacob's behavioral issues quietly, suddenly found themselves facing a crisis that could potentially destroy one of their most successful shows. The incident couldn't be covered up or explained away. Too many people had witnessed it, and word was already beginning to spread throughout the tight-knit reality television community. Legal teams were consulted, insurance companies were notified, and emergency meetings were scheduled to determine how to proceed. What made the situation even more tragic was that this incident wasn't completely unexpected. The warning signs had been building for months, and multiple people had tried to intervene before things reached this point. The very people who had tried to warn about Jacob's deteriorating situation now found themselves dealing with the aftermath of a crisis they had hoped to prevent. The aftermath and family reckoning. The consequences of that devastating incident rippled through every aspect of Jacob's life and career. Within days, network executives made the difficult decision to suspend Jacob from Swamp People indefinitely. This wasn't just a temporary timeout. It was a clear signal that his behavior had crossed a line that the network couldn't ignore, regardless of his popularity with viewers or his importance to the show's success. For Troy Landry, the situation created an agonizing conflict between his roles as a father and a television professional. The Landry family had become synonymous with Swamp People's success, and Troy's reputation had been built on decades of reliability and authenticity. Suddenly, he found himself having to choose between supporting his son and protecting the legacy that had provided for his entire family. In interviews following the incident, Troy's pain was evident as he struggled to address the situation without betraying his son's privacy or the show's confidentiality agreements. The rest of the Landry family was also deeply affected by Jacob's crisis. His siblings, who had grown up alongside him in the public eye, suddenly found their own careers and reputations questioned because of their association with Jacob's behavior. The incident forced the entire family to confront difficult questions about fame, pressure, and their responsibility to each other versus their professional obligations. Within the Pierre Part community, the incident created a complex mix of disappointment and sympathy. Many residents had watched Jacob grow up and genuinely cared about his well-being. However, his behavior had also embarrassed the community that had embraced the national attention brought by Swamp People's success. Local leaders found themselves trying to separate Jacob's personal struggles from the broader positive impact the show had brought to their area. Fellow Swamp People cast members were placed in an incredibly difficult position. Many of them had genuine affection for Jacob and wanted to support him during his crisis. However, they also had their own careers and families to protect, and Jacob's behavior had created potential problems for everyone associated with the show. Several cast members quietly reached out to Jacob privately, offering support and encouragement for him to seek help. But these efforts were largely unsuccessful. The fan community's reaction was particularly intense and divided. Jacob had developed a devoted following, especially among younger viewers who related to his energy and modern approach to traditional hunting practices. Many fans initially refused to believe the reports about his behavior, creating elaborate conspiracy theories about network politics and family conflicts. Others felt personally betrayed, having invested emotional energy in supporting someone who had seemingly deceived them about his character and values. Social media became a battleground of speculation, with fans analyzing every previous episode for signs they might have missed and debating whether Jacob's behavior was a temporary crisis or indicative of longer-term problems. The controversy generated enormous online engagement, but it was the kind of negative publicity that networks typically try to avoid at all costs. The long road to recovery. What happened next will shock you, but it also demonstrates the complexity of personal recovery in the public eye. Rather than immediately seeking help or acknowledging his problems, Jacob initially responded to his suspension by becoming even more defiant and destructive. Sources close to the family reported that he blamed everyone except himself for the situation, claiming that he was being unfairly targeted and that his behavior was being exaggerated by people who wanted to damage his career. This period of denial was perhaps the most difficult for his family and friends to witness. Troy Landry, who had always been able to guide his children through challenges, found himself powerless to help his son until Jacob was ready to accept that help. The situation put enormous strain on the entire family, with some members advocating for tough love approaches, while others pushed for more supportive interventions. The turning point came when Jacob finally recognized that his behavior wasn't just affecting his own career, it was destroying the family legacy that had taken decades to build. The realization that his actions were harming people he loved, particularly his father, who had worked so hard to create opportunities for the entire family, finally motivated Jacob to seek serious help for his problems. Jacob's journey toward recovery wasn't quick or easy. He entered a comprehensive treatment program that addressed not just substance abuse issues, but also the underlying pressures and mental health challenges that had contributed to his destructive behavior. The process required him to confront difficult truths about himself and take responsibility for choices that had hurt people who cared about him. Throughout this recovery process, Jacob largely disappeared from public view. His social media accounts went silent, he stopped making any public appearances, and he declined all interview requests. For someone who had spent years in the spotlight, this withdrawal from public life was a dramatic change that demonstrated his commitment to focusing on healing rather than managing his public image. The Landry family, meanwhile, had to figure out how to continue with Swamp People while Jacob worked on his recovery. Troy made the difficult decision to continue filming, both because the show provided income for the entire family and because he felt a responsibility to the fans who had supported them for so many years. However, the absence of Jacob created a noticeable change in the show's dynamic that longtime viewers immediately detected. The current status and lessons learned. So what really happened behind the scenes? And where does Jacob stand today? The truth, as it often is more complicated than either his strongest supporters or harshest critics would prefer. Jacob's journey back from his lowest point has been gradual, requiring him to rebuild not just his personal relationships, but also his professional reputation within an industry that has little patience for second chances. According to recent reports, Jacob has made significant progress in addressing the underlying issues that led to his destructive behavior. He's completed treatment programs, maintained sobriety, and begun the slow process of repairing relationships with family members and former colleagues. However, his return to television has been limited and carefully managed, with network executives understandably cautious about giving him high-profile opportunities too quickly. The relationship between Jacob and his father Troy has reportedly improved dramatically as Jacob has demonstrated consistent commitment to his recovery. Troy, who initially felt betrayed and disappointed by his son's behavior, has gradually become one of Jacob's strongest advocates for second chances. However, even Troy acknowledges that trust must be rebuilt through actions rather than words, and that process takes time. Within the Swamp People community, Jacob's situation has become a cautionary tale about the pressures of reality television fame and the importance of having strong support systems. Several cast members have spoken publicly about the need for networks to provide better mental health resources for reality show participants, particularly those who become famous at young ages. The incident has also prompted discussions within the Pierre Part community about how to balance the benefits of television fame with the responsibility to protect community members who become public figures. Local leaders have worked to establish better communication channels with production companies and to ensure that community members have access to support resources when dealing with the pressures of national attention. For Jacob personally, the experience has been both devastating and transformative. While he lost several years of his career and damaged important relationships, he's also gained insight into himself and developed coping strategies that he didn't have before his crisis. Friends and family members report that he's become more thoughtful, more grateful for genuine relationships, and more aware of his responsibilities to people who care about him. The entertainment industry's response to Jacob's situation has been mixed but generally supportive of second chances when accompanied by genuine change. However, the industry has also become more aware of the warning signs that preceded Jacob's crisis, and there's been increased attention to providing support resources for reality television participants who might be struggling with similar pressures. What this means for reality television. Jacob Landry's story isn't just about one person's struggles. It's also a window into the broader challenges facing reality television and the people who become famous through these shows. The pressures that contributed to Jacob's problems aren't unique to him or to Swamp People. They're systemic issues that affect many reality show participants who suddenly find themselves dealing with fame, scrutiny, and professional expectations they weren't prepared for. The success of shows like Swamp People depends on authentic personalities and genuine family dynamics. But maintaining that authenticity becomes increasingly difficult as participants become more famous and self-conscious about their public image. The pressure to entertain viewers while also living genuine lives creates contradictions that can be particularly challenging for younger cast members who are still developing their own identities. Jacob's situation has also highlighted the importance of having honest conversations about mental health and substance abuse within reality television communities. For too long, these issues were treated as personal failings rather than health challenges that require professional intervention and ongoing support. The stigma surrounding these problems often prevented people from seeking help until their situations had become crisis level. The warning signs that preceded Jacob's breakdown weren't subtle or hidden. They were visible to anyone who was paying attention and knew what to look for. The fact that so many people tried to intervene suggests that the reality television community is capable of supporting struggling members when problems are identified early. However, it also demonstrates that interventions are only effective when the person receiving them is ready to acknowledge their need for help. Moving forward, Jacob's experience has become a case study for how reality television productions can better support cast members who are dealing with personal challenges. Some networks have implemented more comprehensive mental health resources, regular check-ins with cast members, and clearer protocols for addressing concerning behavior before it reaches crisis levels. The broader impact on the Bayou community. The ripple effects of Jacob's crisis extended far beyond his immediate family and the television show. Pierre Part and the broader Louisiana Bayou community had embraced their role as the setting for one of television's most successful reality shows, and Swamp People had brought significant positive attention and economic benefits to the area. Jacob's situation threatened to overshadow these benefits and potentially damage the community's reputation. Local business owners who had benefited from tourism generated by the show's popularity found themselves answering questions about Jacob's behavior and defending the community's values. Tour guides had to address visitor concerns about whether the problems shown on television reflected broader issues within the Bayou culture. These conversations were particularly difficult because many community members genuinely cared about Jacob and didn't want to see him become a cautionary tale. The incident also forced the Bayou community to confront questions about how traditional cultures adapt to modern media attention. The alligator hunting lifestyle that Swamp People celebrates is built on values like self-reliance, family loyalty, and respect for nature. Jacob's struggles raised questions about whether these traditional values were adequate preparation for dealing with contemporary pressures like fame, social media scrutiny, and entertainment industry demands. Community leaders used Jacob's situation as an opportunity to discuss broader issues affecting young people in rural areas, including limited access to mental health resources, the pressure to leave traditional communities for economic opportunities, and the challenges of maintaining cultural identity in an increasingly connected world. These conversations were difficult but necessary, and they've led to some positive changes in how the community supports its members. Religious leaders within the Bayou community also played important roles in addressing the situation. Many community members turned to their faith for guidance on how to balance forgiveness and accountability, support, and tough love. Church leaders organized prayer groups for Jacob and his family while also using the situation as an opportunity to discuss addiction, mental health, and the importance of seeking help when struggling with personal challenges. Final thoughts and moving forward. So what do you think about Jacob Landry's story? Were the warning signs as obvious as they seem in retrospect? Or is it easy to judge the situation now that we know how it unfolded? The truth is that Jacob's crisis was both predictable and shocking. Predictable because so many people had expressed concerns about his behavior, but shocking because of how dramatically and publicly everything fell apart. Jacob's experience serves as a reminder that fame and success don't protect anyone from personal struggles, and that the pressures of reality television can amplify existing problems rather than solve them. It also demonstrates the importance of having honest conversations about mental health, addiction, and the support systems that people need to navigate difficult periods in their lives. For fans of Swamp People, Jacob's story adds complexity to a show that many viewers watch for entertainment and escapism. It's a reminder that the people we see on television are real individuals with real problems, not just characters created for our entertainment. The responsibility that comes with that realization isn't always comfortable, but it's necessary for maintaining ethical relationships between viewers and reality television participants. The good news is that Jacob's story isn't over, and neither is his opportunity to contribute positively to his family, his community, and potentially even to television. Recovery is an ongoing process, and second chances are possible when they're accompanied by genuine change and consistent effort. The people who warned about Jacob's problems weren't trying to end his career. They were trying to save it, and him. What happened to Jacob Landry serves as both a cautionary tale and a story of hope. It's a reminder that warning signs should be taken seriously, that early intervention can prevent crises, and that recovery is possible even after devastating setbacks. Most importantly, it's a testament to the power of family, community, and genuine support systems in helping people overcome their darkest moments.